Everybody, it's Gary Brown with TUG. I want to welcome you to the training webinar today. Our moderator today is Della Coffelt from Distributors, Corp of America. And Della, go ahead and take it away.
All righty. I want to welcome everybody to the last in our series of webinars on training. So far, what we've done is we've really talked about the basic planning you need to do for training, and then we dug a little bit deeper and we talked about the things you need to think about when it comes to upgrade training versus onboarding new employees. So now, let's take a really deep look at some of the tools. So joining us today, we have David Baum from Midwest Packaging, Jeff Blackwell with DCA, Matthew Battaglia with Turtle and Hughes, and John Edwards with Infor. And we're going to start with Matthew from Turtle and Hughes.
Great, thanks Della. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to do a quick overview of the company, and I'll get right into some of the things that we're doing to build our training program. Hopefully give you guys some tips and hints on where to go and some of the issues that to look out for. So like I said, I'm with Turtle and Hughes. We are a electrical and industrial distributor for quite a while now, going on our 95th year. We have U.S. operations coast to coast. And we also have a separate and distinct division that focuses on integrated supplies. Another key point or fact to the company is that we are employee-owned, and we have about 900 employees. So some of these factors, geographically and logistically pose issues for the training program, and I'll show you how we kind of related those to our goals and topics. All right, so to start, we had to define our scope and the goals. And once again, you'll see how some of these questions tie into what we actually implemented and kind of drove all of our processes forward. What is the desired outcome of training? Are you trying to teach a technical skill, knowledge, or are you trying to develop your employees? What is the appropriate type of content? Is it standard across the board, or will it need to be customized? Should it just be a static PowerPoint PDF file? Or does it need to be more interactive? Along with that, how will we actually deliver this content through the online versus classroom? And then in the end, who will actually sponsor the program? We found the need for an executive sponsor with additional management buy-in. Now with all of these topics, you'll see that the answer really is a mix of both. And I'll show you some of the tools that we are implementing and have implemented in order to facilitate, the need on both sides of these spectrums. But in the end, what was truly important and beneficial to us is the need to establish specific metrics and KPIs and really define what success will look like for us in this program. That'll help a lot gaining support and traction throughout the company. Okay, now how do we facilitate all of those needs? In basic terms, we sought the use of a learning management system, or LMS. Now, it's a term that you probably have all heard, frequently tossed around. It could mean a very sophisticated piece of software, or it could mean, an Excel spreadsheet where you're tracking things manually. We found that a more specific software or sophisticated software would work best for us. We're currently using the Blue Vault platform for some of the reasons that I've listed here below, but a huge part of that was a close tie to our industry in the electrical and industrial fields. They have very close ties with our affiliated distributor network. So some of the things that the LMS really needed to do in order for us to select it and make it work for our program. Need to be accessible, easy to use, and mobile friendly. For our employee base, our sales force that's constantly on the move, this allows them a little bit of flexibility and to take and consume the training as they need. A couple other topics that the LMS needs to provide: a tracking ability, reporting ability. We need it to be customizable, flexible, and scalable. So as you saw, we had over 900 employees. So for us in the industry, we know that sometimes, manpower isn't at excess, so you need to make the most of your time. Finding a program that will allow to scale to size easily was crucially important for us. Flexibility was also a key attribute that we really looked for. The need to address the needs of two very distinct company divisions, and this platform also allows for that. When you do your research on the LMS programs, you'll see that plenty offer features for pretty much anything that you could do. It's really up to the company and someone in your position to identify what's truly important for you and to select the LMS that would work best for your specific situations. Just a quick snapshot of what our platform looks like. You could see here with a little added investment. With the software, we have a very beautiful branded website landing page that anyone in the company can access, whether you're on company premises or in the comfort of your own home. So once we have the LMS tool selected, the next question or the next issue really relies on what content to provide and how to create or get that content. So some of the things that we did, was analyzing our existing library of corporate knowledge and really tried to find where we were lacking. One suggestion that I would strongly suggest is look into outsourcing for any of the professional providers. There's plenty out there in the market space now, some of the biggest ones, Skillsoft. We personally are partnering with a company called Open Sesame, which acts as a marketplace in itself and allows us to pick and choose across the board from many professional providers. Okay. Another thing that I would suggest is to leverage existing partnerships. So for our LMS platform, we actually incorporate our entire suite of the Infor EPAC trainings to provide our users training on the ERP system. Some of the other things that you could do is leverage the subject matter experts within the company to capture the institutional knowledge. One area that we've kind of struggled with and are recently working to get past is the ability to create our own custom content. In order to do that, we have signed up a subscription package with Articulate software, and they provide really, really nice and professional looking content and courses that you can put together that really go above and beyond the normal slide deck. So now I want to kind of spend more time on the challenges that we faced and hopefully, give you guys a heads up to avoid them. One thing that we really had to work hard on was the pricing structure. So with all the LMS platform and the content providers and the authoring tool, there's different formats and setups that we could take. There's some companies that will provide everything for you in one shot, which might make the most sense. In our case, we kind of picked and choose where we sent our business and really just picked out the pieces of IT or tech that would help us the best. And in order to keep the cost down, we looked into some things as the multi-year contracts, a fixed pricing schedule with unlimited uses rather than a per use or per unique user. That might help some companies out if you're looking to keep costs down. And then also in regards to outsourcing the content creation, we really took a look at what the manpower needed to create it in-house versus the cost of it outsourcing it for it. Two other key areas that we kind of had issues was implementation and communication. These will probably be the hardest for you or the biggest challenge for you as you move forward to actually put this in place. A couple of suggestions that I would have as someone starting this endeavor. Definitely trial test it across all locations and departments. We found that as the company has grown, the hardware setups and the computers throughout the company vary pretty differently from site to site, even department to department. So it's good to get a good cross-section of testing done and to identify any IT pitfalls. Third piece of implementation that was a struggle for us is the user management. A lot of the LMS platforms will provide some sort of single sign-on or user integration. I would spend a lot of time making sure that is set up and working prior to rolling this out. That'll help a lot with making sure all the employees are captured, especially new hires as you begin the program. And then finally, communication, definitely an issue for us. It takes the most time to follow up with everyone individually, but it is crucial to follow up. You see here I write that down, follow up, follow up, follow up, and I would include that and stress it greatly. That might be our biggest weakness or my biggest weakness at the time, and I could see now looking back how being able to do that a little bit more thoroughly would be great. Also, a great resource for our HR professionals would be the field contacts. Middle managers are going to be key to the success. We first get the buy-in from the executive level, and then you need to prove and include the middle management within the process. So that's pretty much all I have. Obviously I could expand on anything if anyone has any questions, but I'll pass it back to Della for the next presentation.
Alrighty, so thank you very much, Matt. Anybody have any questions? You have two ways that you can ask a question. You can either type it into the question box, or if you raise your hand, I will unmute you and you can ask your question. So we'll take just a second here to see if anybody has any questions for Matt. Alrighty, well, I'm not seeing any. So our next presenter is David Baum with Midwest Packaging. So we'll turn this over to David.
Hi, I'm Dave Baum with Midwest Packaging. We're located in northwestern Ohio, and we do specialty and custom packaging. Many of you have probably touched some of our products, and you don't even realize it. One of the things that we've done is we are a much smaller user. And we found by doing some video type training that we have really gotten to the point that we get consistency out of our training process. The consistency allows things to happen the way we always want it to. I always think about the joke where you go into a room of people and you whisper something to somebody, and you let that person whisper it to the next person, and by the time it comes all the way back to you, you've got a totally different story than what you originally started off with. So video training has helped us gain things in terms of always being consistent with what we're showing to our people so that we always train the same way. The other thing that it's done is it's helped us quite a bit when it comes to refresh. Oh, I don't remember how to. So we can direct them to Midwest University that we've got out on a server, and we've got links there up to some of the other video platforms. We're currently using Vimeo to do our web training and the ability to see the actual video itself. So what I wanted to do today real quick is just go through and talk about a platform that we are using to create our own training videos. It's a product by the company called TechSmith, and if we can get all the stars to align and all that, we'll probably have maybe a little session down at TUG this year where we go through and can demo that product for you. One of the nice things that we found is that we're able to do this for basically around $1,000. So that kind of makes things cost effective. So what I want to do with my slide today is just talk about some of the tips and techniques when you're creating a video training program. If you remember, when we had our original session, we talked about different types of learners, and I've got them kind of listed out here with my own reasoning behind each one. And if we look at each one of these and we think about it, when we get to talking about video training, guess what? Video training basically touches almost every single type of learner that we learned about when we had our first session. So what are some of the things that make up a very good video training session? Well, some of the things that I found out are shorter is better. So if we can stay in that 2 to 5 minute sweet spot, that's the best thing. It's really helpful to keep the attention going. If you get into something a little bit more complex, you know, the 10 to 12 minute range is okay. If you get much beyond 15 minutes, you start to lose the attention span of your audience. One of the things that we always need to remember is especially as we age, a lot of times our attention is a little bit shorter. So how do we start with a good video? Well, one of the things you need to do is so that we try and get rid of as many of the oopses and the ums and the ahs and all this, create a storyboard. So write out on a big piece of paper what you want to cover in terms of the big picture of what you're trying to get across. Write out a little bit of a script. That's something else that's also very helpful. The other thing is know your audience. And when I say know your audience, think about who you're trying to talk to. Simple graphics are best. You want to think about when it's going to be played back. Is it going to be on a cell phone? Is it maybe going to be on a tablet? Maybe is it going to be on a desktop? When we render a lot of our videos in the current program that we're using, we're rendering these so that they automatically will size and display properly on the device that it's being played on, no matter what that device is. The other thing is does this video need to be secure? When I'm talking about that, I'm talking about things of, are we going to be sharing confidential data that we may need to make sure doesn't get outside of the company? We're using currently Vimeo in-house, and we do have it set up with a password, and only certain people with the actual link to the portion of Vimeo where our material is stored can get to it, and they must have a password also. Some other ways to do that is you may want to host it in-house. If you've got the capability via servers and the proper pipe that you need to go to the internet, you may want to put it out on YouTube like we just heard about. So there's a multitude of different ways, but you always need to think about what and how you're going to secure that, and if you need to secure it. One of the other things that I learned is that it's also very, very important to go ahead and interact with the video with your cursor. So if you see here where I've got my cursor, one of the things that I've already learned in terms of a tip is don't be afraid to turn on and show the end user where your cursor is. One of the tips I found is use the locator function. Now, there are other things that are out there. There are some things where it allows you to highlight your cursor in terms of add-ons and things along those lines. Those are also good options. Some of the things that you don't want to do. You don't want to become a speed racer with your cursor. Soft, slow gel movements are good. Circling with your cursor to reinforce what you're talking about during the video is good. Underlining is great when you can use your cursor to underline what you're talking about. One of the worst things that you can do during a video is to go with your cursor and start being speed racer trying to go all over the screen. That a lot of times causes problems and makes things difficult for people to follow along. Some of the things that you really want to avoid. Our software that we use allow us to do some panning and zooming, and you really want to cut down on that because of the fact that, as I have here on my screen, you can get seasick if you get too much of it. One of the other things that we've done is we've invested in some higher quality audio equipment. What I've got pictured here is something called a Yeti Blue microphone. It runs around $300+ out on the web. But what it does is it allows us to give a professional sounding recording that goes along with the video that we're creating. Things you need to be aware of is that literally you should try to stand up when you're talking because you'll get a different notice and tone level of your voice. Things we need to watch out for. You want to cut back on music that you may be playing in your video. You don't know if your choice that you think is pleasant and pleasurable may be offensive to somebody. If you do want to use video or music with your video, try and limit it to either the intro or the exit out of your video. And then the other couple things are, think about things like P's. You don't want to be a P pounder in the middle of your video where you get that P in there that comes rocketing in with a big thunderous type of effect. You also need to think about other distractions that may be occurring during the recording of your video. Your cell phone, reminders from your computer in terms of incoming emails, maybe fans, things along those lines. So as we keep going forward here, there's a couple things that I'd like you to remember. Tell them what you're going to cover in the intro to your video. During your video, say, show, and do what you're talking about. Review with your audience what you've covered, and then one more time, remind them before they leave. And one last tip that I've learned is you always want to ask for feedback. Feedback for a video that you've done is always helpful. If you take that feedback in a positive light, you will always end up with something that's better than what you did the time before. So that's all I've got. If anybody's got any questions, like I say, if everything comes together, we'll be doing a little session, hopefully at TUG, showing you the product that we're using. We'll make probably just a real quick 2-minute video during that session, and I can show you some of the tools and techniques and things that I've learned along the way, along with the tools that we do use. Della, back to you.
All righty. Well, thank you, David. So I have one question for Matt from Hughes. Luann wants to know, what type of courseware do you get from AD? Uh-oh. Matt, are you on mute?
Sorry. Yeah, I apologize. So what we get from AD is all related to manufacturer and product training. So they publish onto the network that we also have a university on. So through that program, our provider is able to quickly link all of those courses directly into our LMS. But we could also take them directly from the manufacturer if they're packaged in, the correct file type, the SCORM packaging.
Excellent, thank you.
Hopefully that answers.
And for both you and for both Matt and David, what percentage of your users are currently leveraging mobile training?
I can speak on that one first, I guess. Or, oh, sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead. Go on.
I was just going to say a very small percentage. We're actually still in the infancy of the program. I've personally tested, pretty much every other course on the cell phones, and it works great. That just goes into more of the higher level issue or topic of, should they be doing it on company time or, on their own. So we really provide it more as a added benefit rather than a suggested route.
From my perspective, with the platform that we're using, we do have the ability to add into a video a quiz. And a lot of times, if we've got sales reps that are out on the road, they will sometimes jump in to do the training on their phone. Usage-wise, I'd say it's somewhere between probably 10 and 20%.
So Kathy was also asking about, the after hours, during or after business hours. So the mobile will allow them to do it after hours. But do you recommend and actually hold the training sessions during hours, or offer them either one or both?
Dave here. Because we're posting this to Vimeo, we pretty much let the user decide when they want to participate. The other nice thing about having it out on Vimeo is that it's available 24/7, 365. A person can come in and watch it once, twice. They may do something in terms of like, let's see, I haven't done a return now for 6 months. How do I do it again? So they can jump on during the day and do a refresh of their memory in terms of things like how do I do a return. So, you know, it all depends on what's going on in the person's life and all that kind of stuff.
All righty. Excellent. Excellent. Well, excellent question. Thank you, David, so much. All righty. So our next presenter is Jeff Blackwell with DCA. So we'll turn this over to Jeff.
Thank you. Hey, this is Jeff Blackwell. I work for Distributors Corporation of America. We're made up of IEC, which is an electrical and industrial distributor, Mid-America Parts, which is an auto parts distributor, and Mid-South Power, which is a diesel parts distributor. We're on SX 10.3. We have about 180 SX users and about 300 plus employees. Not everybody uses SX. But we went a completely free for us route. All of our email, domain, everything is done through Google. So we actually built a training website using Google Sites. And that's what actually I have on my screen right here is something that I've just kind of been putting together. It's still very young, but we did have a need for user onboard training. We were getting a lot of repetitive questions of how do I change passwords, email passwords, SX passwords, and whatnot. So I threw together a website here. I mean, it's pretty simple, but it's all drag and drop, so it's very easy to put together. One other good thing about using Google for everything is that the documentation can actually live on Google Drive, and then you just provide a link on the Google site website, and when you click it, so for here we have a video that says how to change your remote desktop password. If you click this document link, it'll actually provide you kind of a preview of the document, of the documentation, but you can also download it or print it out if you want to. One thing that we also do is, sorry there, we create videos. We have a user here who enjoys making YouTube videos, and so we've tasked him with creating user training videos on how to do specific things like changing passwords, go through SX processes. And what we do is we actually host them on YouTube, and we just make it an unpublished link, and we put that link on this training website. That way it's not on YouTube public and people can't just go and search it, but as long as they have the link, they'll be able to see the video, and it integrates perfectly with Google Sites. You just put a link and tell it it's part of YouTube, and it'll either play here on the website, or you can click it and it'll zoom in full screen or take you to YouTube, however you want to do it. And we've kind of divvied up everything to different types of training. Like you can see up here, we have SX training, we have stuff for Infor, we use a product called WPCRM. So this is just kind of how I decided to put it all together. It may change in the future, but we do a lot of internal documentation. So anytime that needs to be shared with the user, I'll put it on the Google Drive, make a section for it on Google Sites, and usually I'll provide a link for that to our users. One last benefit for using Google for us is that since it hosts our email, the users are already authenticated against that, so that our website is not published out to the public internet. You have to be logged into one of our email addresses to actually be able to view this content. We can also invite people who are not on our domains to be a part of this as well, so we can kind of do either or. One last thing on the Google Sites, it automatically resizes it for mobile devices. I haven't really done a whole lot of it on mobile, but when you do a preview, when you're doing the design, you can actually say, I want to see what it looks like in mobile. So yeah, we kind of did a little different strategy than everybody else. We went free. In the future, we're going to probably add quizzes to our documentation and our videos, which there's an option on Google as well to do a form, but turn it into a quiz, and we can send results to their managers and whatnot. So that's basically it. Della, back to you.
Any questions for Jeff on what we've done there? All righty. Okay, so it brings us to our last presenter. I changed his name on him. He really he didn't realize that his last name was different, but this is John Brown with Infor. So we'll pass this on to John.
Right. Okay, what I want to do is share with you how you can leverage Campus Plus so that you don't want to recreate the wheel. We've got a bunch of resources out there for you that you can leverage. And then I want to share with you some tips for leveraging that will work whether or not you're using our stuff, our self-study materials or not. Now, I am the guy at Infor who goes out and figures out what training our education department needs to create for the users. So it's wonderful to be here, and I've really appreciated these presentations up till now. A lot of good information there for you. So let me just start with this, okay? You don't want to recreate the wheel. Creating training from scratch takes a lot of time. And so if there's anything that you can outsource, then that usually is a good idea. And then you can take your precious time and dollars and focus them on things that are particular to your company. And the first thing that I want to start with is down here. This is going to be the first tip for leveraging what we provide to you on Campus Plus. And this applies to what, it doesn't matter what kind of training plan that you're doing, okay? Whether you're using our stuff or anything else. And that is, you always want to start with writing down simple, effective objectives. I know you've had 2 other meetings and you might have talked about objectives, but I want to plug it again because it's so vital in being able to leverage the stuff that we have. Now, there are a lot of books out there and a lot of people who give you programs for how to write objectives. Many of them are over-engineered. It's too difficult to really actually implement. But this stuff here by Robert Mager, Preparing Instructional Objectives, it's actually it's not a thick book, right? It's very down to earth, very practical. And if you haven't read his stuff and you're responsible for any type of training program, please, please, please go get this book and read it. The very first thing that you need to do with any training program is figure out what do the people need to know. And in a nutshell, is you want to identify the things that they need to be able to do, and we'll call that a performance. And that is, again, things that they are going to do or produce. And the key with this is that it's visible. It can be observed. I'm going to give you some examples of that in just a second. The next thing, this is optional, is the conditions that that performance has to occur in. And then the final thing is the criteria. How accurate, what type of quality do they have to have? And those second 2 things are optional. I'm going to focus right now on the performance itself. So you want to focus on what you can observe. Things you can't observe and include writing a statement that, hey, we want them to understand this, or we want them to know this, or appreciate this, or grasp this, or enjoy this, or believe. All of these things are things we can't observe. They become very difficult to actually create training for, and very difficult to assess whether or not you've been successful with your training. Things you can observe include things like, I'm going to enter or write or sort or produce or build or identify, or even in customer service, whether or not I'm going to smile. They might not be enjoying it, but boy, I can sure tell when they're smiling. When we get to product knowledge, like SX.enterprise or Cloud Suite distribution, here are some examples of what I'm talking about. Print a report, post a journal, generate a lot number, post time worked on a job, record what was shipped to the customer, process a cycle count, record materials returned to vendor. These are things that I can actually observe them doing. And before I create any training program, I want to look at and say, well, here's the function, right? Here's the function that I need to train for. What are the key things that they need to be able to do that I can observe, or the key decisions that they have to make? You might have some extra information like some conceptual information that they need to know. So it might be something like, hey, what are the consequences? We want them to be able to explain the consequences of putting a customer on credit hold in the application. What ramifications does that have? Now here's where we put in conditions, and the way that we do that is very simple. We say, hey, given a demand detail form or some other form or screen that you have in the application, they need to be able to identify what's causing an order to be late. Or given the original transaction information, they've got to be able to go out to the GL and identify all adjustments to that transaction. Or given a set of labor or machine resources, they need to be able to create the appropriate resources and resource groups in the application. These are all examples of things that you can observe. Now, again, why am I spending time with this when, you know, I'm with Infor and I want to talk about Campus Plus? Because you need to know exactly what these different functions know so that you can then turn to our stuff and say, oh, I can leverage their stuff for all of these objectives. And then I can see I've got these other additional objectives that I have with the software, and oh, I'll need to then create some stuff for that. So very critical that you get this right off the bat. Now, once you've done that, the next thing that I want to recommend to you is that you leverage our learning paths. We have already done this and created the video training, created the training guides, created all the training material for these 10 learning paths. So you can see the hours of training that go along with that. So for example, for branch hours, well, that's a 16 hours worth of training plus the foundation for 8 hours on, you know, that goes along with that. Or for purchasing on the other side, that's going to be about 8 hours worth of training that's already been created for you, and then the foundation, the navigation, the 101 that gives you an overview of the system. So the thing that you want to do with Campus Plus is look at it as, hey, I've got all of these objectives. Let me not recreate the wheel. They've already created training for that. Gee whiz, let's go see if that's going to be a better solution for us. And then we can spend all of our custom training on the things that they don't cover. Now, the other thing is what resources do you have in this? And of course, there are training guides, so there's documentation there. We have self-paced courses for all of those training paths that I just showed you before. These include videos, all right? It's audio, video. We also include with this an instructor monitored chat. So every day our instructor goes out and monitors the chat for the lesson. You might be working through the video class and you're like, I just don't get this. Doesn't make sense to me. And what about this situation? Well, you go right out onto the chat, and then we have an Infor expert that's available there to you to answer the question. All of these self-paced courses are designed for hands-on exercises. We want you to get in and actually enter the order or perform the cycle count. We don't want you just to see it. And so SX.enterprise and Cloud Suite Distribution ships with Company 1000. That's the training database that we use. So you can bring that up at your site and have your people do the exercises right there in that database, or you can get a copy of that, a hands-on lab from us for a minimal charge. This is all part of Campus Plus. So it's all intensive hands-on exercises. We're guiding you through learning all of these things that you need to be able to do for that specific role. Now, some people want a little bit more instructor interaction. And what we've done here is we have included in the membership instructor-assisted courses. These aren't full live courses. What this is a blend of live sessions where the instructor will maybe start the class and end the class with a live session, and maybe even in between time have a live session. And then the rest of it is where you use that self-paced course so that you can learn at your own time and your own pace. Our customers who've been taking these have really enjoyed them. And if that's not enough, if you still are like, I am just not getting it, well, Campus Plus includes live instructor office hours. And you can schedule a half an hour and get in there and talk to a customer or talk to an instructor about your questions about the classes. It's not a time to do consulting, but it is a time to say, I've gone through the class, I just don't get it. And I need a little bit of help. I have some questions about this. So that's all of the stuff that's in the membership to help you get through those learning paths. And then after that, after your path, we are releasing new features every month, and we create new feature videos on that on a periodic basis. We will roll those into the classes and create hands-on exercises for those as well. But in the meantime, you've got those new feature videos, and we hold special training webinars. This is all part of Campus Plus. In addition to that, you get some savings on Tech Ed. This is an event that we hold. The next one's coming up in October, and it is advanced technical training. And so this allows you to get, to go and take that as well. So there's one other thing that I want to talk about in the time that I have. I have just a couple of minutes here, and I'm going to end with this. And that is, whether you're using our stuff or whether it's your own self-study, self-paced study, there are some things over the years that we have found have a dramatic effect on the success of a self-study program, or one that is mostly self-study. And I'm going to run through these best practices with you. So the first is, you need to manage it. And by that, I mean two things. Number one, especially if you're doing an implementation or you're doing an upgrade, you've got some project, some training project, it has to be put in, the self-study has to be put in the plan. It has to go in that plan. If it's an implementation, it has to go in the implementation plan. If it's an upgrade, it has to go in the upgrade plan. If it doesn't, nobody will remember it, it won't get done. The other thing is this, you saw with those learning paths, some of the 16 hours, right, 8 hours. If we don't go to management and say, hey, Bill is going to need 16 hours to get this done, and it's probably going to have to take or happen away from his desk, because he's just not going to be able to get it done with all the emails and the fires that he's got to fight. We've got to set aside some time for them. If that doesn't happen, it gets very difficult for them to complete that training. All right, so that's the first thing. We got to manage it. The next thing is we want to support the student. That includes providing them a training environment so they can do the hands-on exercises. And as I said again, it ships with the product. It's Company 1000. And if you don't want to use yours, you can get one from us for a minimal fee. All right. The next thing is that if you're going to be using Campus Plus, you want to orient them to the training path, all the courses, course A, B, C on the path, and the site. You don't want them fumbling around, getting frustrated trying to find things. So take a little bit of time and orient them to that. The next thing that we found that works very, very well is there is a little bit of inertia when you have to get people to go start taking training, especially if it's self-study. The best way to get over that inertia is say, you know what, we're going to complete the first course together as a group, or just the first hour or two. And that gets everybody over that hump. It gets them oriented to the training path and the site. It gets them moving along the path. You can continue this. We have a customer, they had 200 end users across multiple sites. They needed to do a whole bunch of training. A lot of it included our Infor application, and they just did the lunch and learn approach. They just continued that throughout. They would watch the videos in our self-study classes. They would do the exercises that we had designed, and that they work in the training database, but they would do it together as a group. I highly recommend that if you can do it. The other thing that gives your users a great deal of help is if you just create the weekly training schedule for them. You've got a project plan, it's got to be done by this time. Just give them a suggested schedule. It's like when we go to cook dinner. The hardest thing about cooking dinner, I found, is figuring out what it is I want to cook. Once I've got that down, it's a lot easier. And so just give them the recipe, give them the schedule, and it makes it a lot easier for them. Now, there's one last thing that I want to give you, and then I'll end and see if there are any questions. And that is this. If you set somebody in front of 18 hours worth of self-study, and a good portion of that, 9 hours, 7 hours, 4 hours is watching videos, then you have a high likelihood that you're going to turn them into a zombie. They just won't finish it. If instead you say, I want you to take this training in order to produce some deliverables that are going to be important on the job, it's a whole different matter. And then they attack it with a lot more attention. Some of these deliverables might be a business process sketch. This is especially important for a project team, or if you're trying to review, I want to use some new part of the system, you're going to want to have that. or a job aid, a work instruction, or an issue and question list. And if none of these work, then the other thing that you want to do is create a simple assessment and tell them, we are going to be assessed at the end of this. And this takes us all the way back to where I started. If you know your objectives and they're observable, then you can come in and very easily administer an assessment. You can watch them do it. You can create a multiple choice test. You can use something like EPAC or what we have replaced that with at Infor, which is our user adoption platform. You can use those and observe that, yes, all of these objectives that we had, yep, they can do them and they're done. Okay, I think that's where I'll end today. And Della, I'll turn the time back to you.
All righty, thank you very much. Any questions for John?
And Della, while we're waiting for any questions to come in, we should mention that TUG Connects is going to have a training agenda, if you will, and some of what you've seen today we'll be bringing back with more detail involved and some more specific examples of how things work. So put it on your agenda, but this has been a very important topic.
Oh, we do have one question. Is EPAC being replaced?
The answer to that is yes, it has already been replaced. So there's this other tool called UAP, or User Adoption Platform, and it works. If you know what EPAC is, it's basically the same thing. It's a similar product. And the next question that people have, if they already have EPAC, is, well, okay, what do I do with my EPAC courses that I've already created? And there is a tool that we have to have you convert those over to that format. And so you can just ping me at john.brown@infor.com, and I can get you hooked up with people that can talk to you about what that entails. But the answer is yes, it has already been replaced. And this user adoption platform is our go-forward product for that solution.
Okay. We have another question regarding the Infor campus. Is there any way to get a tour of it? How do we best do that so that we can utilize it? With CSD, it includes EPAC. So then EPAC, it would actually start including the UAP. And then Infor Campus, where does that fit? How do you see a tour of it? How do you get access to it?
Yeah, so Infor Campus is a big box store. It's like Walmart. And anybody who is an Infor customer can go into Walmart or go into campus and look around and see what's there. And so the way that you get your login is you shoot an email to inforcampus@infor.com. And they'll get you that login, and you can go around and kick the tires. If you want a guided tour, you can contact them. They're happy to do it. I'm happy to give you the tour and show you what we have there for Cloud Suite distribution and distribution SX.e. That's probably the easiest way to do it. And then, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yep, I think that does. Any other questions? Anybody? I think we've got them all answered. 1 second. All righty. Well, I would like to say thank you very much to the audience, and thank you very much to our 4 presenters. Hope to see everybody at the conference in Orlando, where we can look at some details on and kind of maybe kick some tires on how to use different products to create training, to create our training tools. So thank you very much, and everybody have a great day.